12 men knelt for glory. One stood for truth. He had no name, no master, and no place in the world, only the weight of his silence. When the daimyo's daughter raised her eyes, the province of Mikawa froze. Honor dictated she choose the noble. Her heart chose the exile. That single decision shattered a century of order, because the purest loyalty is sometimes born from disobedience. In the 12th year of the Tensho era, when the cherry trees still carried the last weight of winter snow, Daimyo Takeda Nobuyoshi made an announcement that echoed through every vassal castle in Mikawa. His daughter, Lady Akane, was 23, dangerously late in years for a woman of her station to be unpromised. Not for lack of suitors, on the contrary. The problem was precisely the excess of them. Takeda had built his power less by the sword than by diplomatic cunning. His castle was a web of alliances, each strand tugging on the next, each jealous of its place. Choosing one son-in-law meant elevating one clan above the others. It meant unbalancing the web. It meant potentially civil war. So Takeda, in his infinite wisdom or desperation, proposed something without precedent. A tournament, not of swords but of virtues. 12 samurai, representing the 12 most influential clans of his alliance, would compete in demonstrations of courage, wisdom, loyalty, and martial skill. Lady Akane would choose the victor. The decision would be hers, but the framework his. Every clan would have a chance. No one could complain. It was a perfect plan. On paper, Lady Akane was not what samurai expected. Raised in part by her mother, a court lady from Kyoto who died when Akane was 12, she had something rare for provincial castle daughters: literary education, while other daughters of daimyo practiced tea ceremony and flower arrangement. Akane devoured Chinese classics in her father's library: Confucius, Sun Tzu, the poems of Li Bai about warriors. Returning to homes that no longer recognized them, she grasped what the men around her pretended not to see. Bushido, in its purest form, is a philosophy about death, about how to die well. But she wanted to learn how to live well, and none of the 12 samurai parading through the castle, flashing armor and lineage, seemed to know the difference. There was Matsudaira Tadaaki, third son of the most powerful clan, reciting war poetry with eyes as empty as a frozen lake. Sakai Yoshiharu, a kendo master, whose casual contempt for his servants had become invisible to him. Honda Masanobu, a brilliant strategist who spoke of people as shogi pieces, all men of honor, all irreproachable in their adherence to the code, all entirely unable to see beyond it. And then there was the 13th man. If you felt the weight of honor in this story so far, subscribe. It helps us bring the spirit of old Japan to more people who still believe in dignity and sacrifice. And tell us, where are you watching from? He arrived 3 days before the tournament began, at the castle's south gate, where merchants delivered rice and messengers awaited dispatches, not at the main gate where samurai entered. That alone should have marked him as irrelevant. No one knew his true name. He gave only Kenshin, Heart of the Sword, a name too generic to be real, likely chosen when he lost the right to a family name. His age was hard to guess. Ronin aged differently, burned by sun and road. He might have been 30, he might have been 40. His lone sword had a plain tsuba, no clan crest. His clothes were clean but mended. He had no right to be there. Yet there was something in his eyes that made the guard captain hesitate before sending him away. "I've come for the tournament," the Ronin said, voice calm as a stone at a river's bed. "The tournament is for samurai, of recognized clans," the captain answered, not unkindly. It was easy to be gentle with men who posed no threat. The announcement did not specify that. Technically true. The announcement said, "Samurai of recognized virtue." No one imagined they needed to specify that Ronin, samurai without master, lineage, or place, were excluded. It was obvious. Except legally it wasn't written. The captain brought the matter to the daimyo. Takeda laughed. "Let him in. It will be entertaining. The other 12 are so proud. Good for them to see what they're up against when they fall. Cruelty disguised as generosity. But orders were orders. Kenshin was admitted. He was given a corner in the outer barracks, not where the 12 samurai lodged, but close enough to be reminded daily of the distance. He bowed deeply and said nothing more. Akane first saw him from the viewing pavilion as he crossed the training yard. Something in the way he moved caught her attention. The other 12 walked with the confidence of men who had always known their place in the world. Genshin moved like someone who had lost his place and learned to inhabit the empty space it left. She did not know it yet, but she was already fascinated. The first trial was announced at dawn. The 13 candidates were to climb Mount Horai, known for its treacherous cliffs and the abandoned shrine at its summit. There each would plant a flag with his name. Simple enough, except it was early spring, and the mountain was still shrouded in uneven snow. Snow that hid holes and cliffs beneath its calm white skin. The 12 clan samurai set off together, armor gleaming in the rising sun, their servants carrying supplies. They turned the trial into a parade. Kenshin departed alone. An hour later, wearing no armor, carrying only his sword and a small leather pouch. Lady Akane watched the flags appear through the Chinese telescope her father had brought from Nagasaki. One by one, across 6 long hours, 12 banners rose atop the shrine. The samurai returned by dusk, sweaty, boasting, competing for the most dramatic version of their climb. The 13th flag never appeared. The Ronin has failed, Matsudaira Tadaki declared with barely hidden satisfaction. Probably frozen on the mountain. But when the sun began to set and Kenshin had not returned, something shifted in Akane's face. Worry. She asked her father to send a search party. For a Ronin? Takeda frowned. He knew the risks. Then the risks were real, Akane replied calmly. And if they were real, the other 12 had luck, or the 13th had misfortune. But we'll never know which if we let him die on that mountain. Something in her tone, or perhaps the echo of her late mother in her voice, made Takeda yield. The search team found Kenshin 3 hours later, halfway down the mountain carrying an old man on his back. The man was a hermit who lived in a cave and had slipped, breaking his leg. Kenshin had found him on his way to the top, planted his flag without ceremony, and returned to rescue him. The task was to plant the flag, the search leader said, confused. You'd already done it. The task was courage, Kenshin answered. Leaving a man to die when I can save him isn't courage. It's cowardice wearing the mask of obedience. When they brought Kenshin back, covered in mud and blood, none of it his, Akane was waiting at the gate. She said nothing. She only looked at him, really looked as if reading a foreign language, and bowed, small but unmistakable. The 12 samurai saw it, and for the first time they felt something they had never felt competing among themselves. Fear. The second trial was devised by Takeda himself, too cunning to let a Ronin gain moral ground easily. It would be an intellectual test. Each candidate would answer a koan, a Zen paradox, before the court. There was no correct answer, only responses that revealed character. The 12 samurai prepared feverishly, consulting monks, memorizing ancient commentaries, rehearsing the insights of famous masters. Strategy disguised as enlightenment. Kenshin did not prepare. Takeda's koan was a classic. A man hangs from a branch over a cliff, gripping only with his teeth. His hands cannot touch the branch. His feet find no ground. Another man above asks, "What is the meaning of Zen?" If he answers, he falls. If he stays silent, he ignores the other. What should he do? The 12 samurai gave varied answers, all technically correct in Zen tradition. Some said the man should release the branch, embrace death. Others said he should laugh, transcend the dilemma. A few argued that the question itself was the trap. When Kenshin's turn came, he was silent for a long time. So long that some began to whisper he did not understand the question. Then he said, "With all respect, Daimyo-sama, this is the kind of question a man with a castle asks, not one who has ever hung from a branch for real." The hall went utterly silent. "Explain," Takeda said, his voice dangerously soft. "When you are truly falling," Kenshin said, "there is no philosophy. There is only the branch, your teeth, and the choice each second to keep holding on. The question, what is the meaning of Zen, comes from someone standing safely on the ground, and the man on the branch knows that. So the real answer isn't about Zen. It's about knowing that the one who asks isn't hanging there with you. And what does that teach? Asked Akane, leaning forward, her first public question during the tournament. Kenshin looked directly at her. That wisdom without empathy is just intelligence. And intelligence without heart saves no one from the fall. That night Akane could not sleep. She stayed in the pavilion, staring at the moon, thinking of branches, cliffs, and men who pretend not to be falling. The third trial was the vilest. Takeda was beginning to sense the tournament slipping from his control, and powerful men hate losing control. Each candidate received a sealed order to be carried out without question. That, they were told, would be the test of loyalty, absolute obedience. The orders for the 12 samurai were harsh but harmless. Stand guard through the night. Copy sutras until dawn. Fast for 3 days. Discomforts meant to show discipline. Kenshin's order was different. When he opened the paper in his barracks, he read, "Prove your loyalty by killing the gardener's dog. Bring me its tail before dawn." Kenshin stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it carefully and walked out. He did not go to the gardener's quarters. He went straight to the main hall, where Takeda was drinking sake with his advisors. "Daimyo, Sama," Kenshin said, kneeling, "I cannot obey this order." Takeda smiled. He had him, finally. "Then you failed the trial of loyalty." "No, Lord. I failed the trial of blind obedience." "They are not the same. Explain the difference to someone who can order your death." "Loyalty," said Kenshin, his voice echoing in the silent hall, "means wanting what is best for the one you serve. Obedience means only doing what you are told. If I kill the dog, I prove obedience, but I also prove I can be manipulated into meaningless cruelty. And a man who accepts senseless cruelty today will accept betrayal tomorrow if ordered cleverly enough." "You refuse to serve?" "I refuse to serve poorly." There is a difference. Takeda should have been furious. But something in Kenshin's utter honesty, his absence of fear or calculation, disarmed him. It was like looking into a mirror stripped of all politics and strategy, showing only the question, what do you truly value? "Go," Takeda said at last. "You failed the trial." Officially, but when Kenshin left, Akane turned to her father. "He didn't fail. We failed for creating a test that confuses loyalty with complicity." For the first time, Takeda looked at his daughter and saw her mother, and for the first time in years, he was afraid of what he had taught her. The fourth trial was what everyone had been waiting for, to combat. Not to the death. Takeda was not barbaric, but to first blood or disarmament. The 12 samurai dazzled. Their techniques were immaculate, years of training under the finest masters. Matsudaira's style was aggressive, Sakai's defense impeccable. Honda could read movements before they happened. Kenshin fought last, against Honda Masanobu, considered the most skilled of the 12. The duel lasted exactly 7 seconds. Honda attacked with his signature strike, a high cut that forced opponents to counter and expose themselves. Kenshin didn't counter, he simply moved, minimal, fluid, letting the blade pass so close it sliced a few strands of his hair. Then, before Honda could recover, Kenshin placed the tip of his sword at his neck. It wasn't flashy. No flourish of steel or show of power, just efficient. Like water finding the path of least resistance. "Where did you learn that?" Honda asked, breath trapped. "In places where seconds decide life or death," Kenshin said quietly. "Where there are no judges, no second rounds, no mercy." Honda lowered his blade. "You've fought real wars." "No," said Kenshin softly. "I fought to survive. It's different. You fight with the safety net of Bushido beneath you. I fought over the void." That night, the 12 samurai met in secret council. For the first time, they were not competing against one another. They were conspiring against the Ronin. The fifth and final trial was announced as a demonstration of complete character, deliberately vague. Each candidate would spend an entire day serving the castle in whatever way he chose. Akane would observe and judge the 12 planned elaborate displays. Matsudaira would command the troops in perfect formation. Sakai would host a tea ceremony for the highest officers. Honda would review the castle's defenses and write a strategic report. Impressive, all entirely performative. Kenshin disappeared at dawn. Akane searched for him discreetly, telling no guards. Something in her told her she needed to see this herself. She found him in the Ashigaru barracks, among the foot soldiers. Peasants with spears, the backbone of every army, yet treated like furniture. Kenshin sat with them, sewing, not a metaphor, literally sewing their torn garments, mending worn sandals, sharpening their dull spears. "Why here?" Akane asked, stepping from the shadows. Kenshin didn't seem surprised to see her. "Because they are forgotten," he said. "The samurai compete for your hand, thinking of power and position. But the real power of a daimyo comes from those willing to die for him. And no one dies for someone who doesn't see them, and you see them. I was them. When you lose your clan name, you realize the distance between a samurai and a peasant fits on a piece of paper." Akane sat down. Scandalous act. The daimyo's daughter, on the dirt floor of the foot soldiers' quarters. "You're not trying to impress me." "No. The others are performing elaborate acts." "I know. You'll lose if you stay here." Kenshin looked at her, eyes filled with old sadness. "Lady Akane, I've learned that impressing people is easy. Helping them is hard, and in the end, only one of those lets you sleep at night." She stayed there, watching him work until sunset. Neither spoke again. They didn't need to. When she returned to the castle, her father was waiting. The 12 completed their demonstrations. Magnificent performances. The Ronin never appeared in public areas. He was working, Akane said. Where it mattered. And Takeda, looking at his daughter, the stranger she had become, or perhaps always was, realized he had lost control of something more important than a tournament. He had lost control of the story itself. On the eve of the announcement, the entire castle held its breath. The 12 samurai gathered in the garden, drinking sake beneath the blooming cherry trees. They argued nervously over who Akane might choose. Matsudaira had the strongest lineage. Sakai, the finest education. Honda, the sharpest tactical mind. Kenshin sat alone in the outer barracks, polishing his one sword. Akane could not sleep. She wandered through the castle's corridors, passing portraits of ancestors, stern men in heavy armor, elegant women with hollow eyes. Her family's history was one of choices made for politics, not for the heart. And each generation seemed a little paler, a little colder. She stopped before her mother's portrait, the only one smiling. "What would you do?" she whispered. The painting offered no answer, but Akane already knew. She had known since the first trial, perhaps, since she saw a man give up victory to save a stranger. Only one problem remained. Choosing Kenshin wasn't just choosing a husband. It meant dismantling the entire structure her father had built, insulting 12 clans at once. It meant, potentially, civil war. The weight of that choice was unbearable. So she did what she always did when the impossible pressed too close. She went to the library and read poetry. She found a poem by Li Bai she hadn't read since childhood. 3 cups, and I can see the great way. A full jug, and I am one with the universe, yet the joy of wine passes, and only sorrow remains. She finally understood what it meant. Truth can be found in fleeting moments, but living that truth carries a permanent cost. The question was she willing to pay it? While Akane read poetry, the 12 samurai plotted betrayal, not open treachery. They were men of honor, after all. But there are ways to remove a problem without dirtying one's hands. Ways Bushido can still technically allow. If the Ronin were to have an accident, Matsudaira began carefully. In the night. A hired band of killers, perhaps. None of us would be responsible. Hiring assassins is dishonorable, Sakai said. More dishonorable than losing to a man with no name, Honda countered. Think of your clans, your families. If she chooses the Ronin, we become jokes." The silence that followed was heavy with complicity. "He doesn't need to die," Honda finally said. "Just disappear. Enough money to leave the province. A new life elsewhere. We even do him a favor. Lies that honorable men tell themselves. They sent a messenger, not one of them, never that, to the outer barracks. The offer was generous. 20 koku of rice, a forged letter of recommendation, safe passage to Kyushu. All Kenshin had to do was leave before dawn." Kenshin listened silently, then asked, "And if I stay?" The messenger, an older, weary Ronin, only looked at him. "Accidents happen to men who don't understand their place." "I understand my place," Kenshin said. "I just don't agree with it." "Then you're a fool." Probably. The messenger left. Kenshin returned to polishing his sword. Not because he expected a fight, though he did, but because the ritual calmed him. Repetition cleared the mind. Preparation to accept whatever might come. He had no illusions about his chances. 12 against 1, trained warriors, on their own ground. But there were things worse than death, living as a coward, abandoning the one thing that still mattered, even knowing he could never have it. At 3 in the morning he heard footsteps, not 12, 1. Akane found Kenshin awake, sword polished, waiting. "They're coming to kill you," she said without preamble. "I know. You have to leave. Now." "I can't." "Why not?" Frustration cracked through her calm, the first true emotion she'd shown since the tournament began. "You owe me nothing. You know you can't defeat 12 men. Even if you did, my father will never let me choose a Ronin. So why die for something impossible?" Kenshin was silent for a long time, then said, "When you lose everything, name, clan, place in the world, you discover there's only one thing left that no one can take, the choice of who you are when no one is watching. I choose not to run, not because I can win, but because it's who I need to be to live with myself." "That's not Bushido," Akane said. "That's stubbornness." "It's both. True Bushido, not the kind taught in clan halls, is about living with dignity when no external dignity remains." Akane closed her eyes. When she opened them, her decision was made. "If you stay, I stay. If you fight, I fight. Not with a sword I never learned, but with the only weapon I have, my choice. Lady Akane, no." She cut him off. "You think you're the only one who knows what it means to be invisible? I'm the Daimyo's daughter, a bargaining piece, a womb for heirs. No one has ever asked me what I want. No one. Until you. You never asked for anything. You didn't perform. You didn't try to impress me. You just lived as you believed and showed me it was possible. They'll never allow it. Then let them not allow it. But they won't say you tricked me or seduced me. I'll make it clear, I choose you. Knowing everything. Knowing the consequences." Kenshin looked at her, truly looked, as she had looked at him at the gate after the first trial, and saw something that scared him more than 12 swords. Hope. "Why?" he asked. "Because you asked me the one question no one else ever has." "What question?" "None. Exactly that. You never asked what I wanted, what I thought, what I felt. You simply lived your truth and left me free to live mine. You treated me as an equal, not a prize. And that I've never known before." Dawn began to lighten the sky. "They will come," Kenshin said. "Let them come." The announcement was to be made at noon, before the entire court. But before that, Akane called a private meeting, only her father and the 12 samurai. "No witnesses. There has been conspiracy," she said plainly. "A plan to remove the 13th candidate." The 12 went pale. "How did she know?" "It doesn't matter how I know," Akane continued. "It matters that it happened. And it tells me something about you, about what you truly value." "Lady Akane," Matsudaira began, "we must explain." "No need. I know why you did it. Clan honor, tradition, avoiding shame. All excellent reasons. If you believe people are less important than paper." Silence. Takeda watched his daughter, as though seeing her for the first time. This was not the quiet girl who read in the library. This was something else, something dangerous. I choose Kenshin, Akane said. Not because he passed every test, he technically failed half of them, but because he understands something you do not. A code of honor that forbids compassion is not honor. It's pride wearing fine clothes. You cannot, Honda said, not a threat, merely a fact. It's politically impossible. It insults all our clans. Your father, my father, Akane turned to him, built his power on alliances. But alliances held together by fear of insult are weak. A single gust and they crumble. He knows this. Takeda said nothing. Because she was right. But there is another kind of power, Akane continued. Power that comes from doing what's right, even when it's hard. From proving that character matters more than lineage. You 12 are honorable men. You've shown it in combat, in service, in loyalty to your clans. But Kenshin proved something rarer, that it's possible to have honor without any structure to support it. Sakai shifted, uneasy. And what of order? Of hierarchy that keeps the peace. Order that requires injustice to survive isn't order. It's control, Akane said. My father taught me to play Go. Do you know the most important principle in Go? No one answered. Knowing when to sacrifice stones, when to yield territory to gain something greater. She looked at each of them in turn. You are all trying to protect territory. Pride, tradition, hierarchy. But you're losing something greater, the chance to be part of something that matters. Beautiful words, Matsudaira said bitterly. But they don't change reality. You marry a Ronin, our clans revolt. Your father loses allies. This castle falls. Maybe, Akane said. Or maybe something none of you have considered will happen. What? That you might be great enough to accept it. After the 12 left, in heavy silence, neither agreeing nor defying, Akane remained with her father. Takeda studied her the way he studied Go boards before a decisive move. Calculating, weighing. You want to destroy everything I built, he said finally. No, I want to save what you built from the way you built it. She stepped closer. Father, you forged alliances through marriages, politics, mutual fear. It worked, for now. But what happens when you die? When I die, the 12 clans will turn on each other immediately. You know this. Takeda did not deny it. But if I marry Kenshin, a man without clan, without ambition, without hidden agenda, what threat does he pose? None. The 12 clans all lose equally. And in shared loss, there's no cause for war. Shared loss can become the strongest bond. Takeda blinked, then slowly began to laugh. A rough, surprised, almost proud laugh. You've learned far more Go than I imagined. I learned from the best, but you forget something, Takeda said, serious again. Even if your logic is sound, even if it makes political sense. A Ronin as the husband of a daimyo's daughter. Dangerous precedent. The clans will see it as weakness or strength, Akane countered. Strength to choose by character, not fear. Other daimyo marry for alliances because they must. We can afford to marry for merit. That's not weakness. That's proof of power. Long silence. You truly want this? Takeda asked. Not for politics. Not for philosophy. You, as a woman, want this man? It was the first time he had ever asked what she wanted. Not what was useful. Not what was proper. What she wanted. Akane thought of Kenshin polishing his sword in the barracks. Thought of him carrying the hermit down the mountain. Thought of the way he looked at her. Not as a prize, not as duty, but as someone he respected enough not to lie to. Yes, she said. I want him. Takeda closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something like resignation, or perhaps release. Hard to tell. Then you shall have him, he said. But on one condition. What condition? He must kneel. Before me, before the 12, before the court. He must swear loyalty formally, not as a Ronin, but as a samurai of my clan. I will adopt him, give him a name, make him your equal on paper, not just in character. Akane hesitated. He might refuse. I know. That's why it's the real test. If his pride is too great to bow, even to win you, then he's not a man I can trust. But if he kneels, if he accepts the public humiliation of being elevated by me, then he proves he understands that true dignity sometimes requires accepting false dignity. It was brilliant, cruel, and brilliant. It allowed Takeda to save face, gave the 12 clans a tolerable narrative. The Ronin was adopted, now he's one of us, and tested whether Kenshin could swallow pride for something greater. I'll speak to him, Akane said. Akane found Kenshin in the stone garden, watching the sun rise over the cherry blossoms. The flowers were at their peak, perfect and doomed, moments before their fall. He looked as though he hadn't slept. My father offers adoption, she said. He will give you a clan name, status as a samurai, everything you lost, everything you need to marry me. In exchange for a public ceremony, you kneel before him, swear loyalty, accept that he elevates you from Ronin to samurai. Accept the story that it's his generosity, not my choice. Kenshin didn't answer immediately. He kept watching the blossoms, as if they might hold the answer. It's a lie, he said at last. Yes, a lie that saves his reputation. That lets the 12 clans accept without appearing weak. A politically necessary lie. Yes. And you want me to live that lie? Akane sat beside him on the stone bench. No. I want you to choose which truth matters more. The truth of pride or the truth of life. Pride says you must stay pure and alone. Life says you bend a little so we can build something real behind the performance. You're asking me, Kenshin said slowly, to be a hypocrite. No, I'm asking you to be pragmatic. There's a difference. What difference? A hypocrite believes the lie. A pragmatist uses it as a tool while living the truth where it counts. In private, in daily choices. In how we treat people when no one is watching. Kenshin closed his eyes. When I lost my clan name, I swore I would never live a lie again, that I would rather be a nameless wanderer than a samurai bound by falsehood. And what if the choice isn't between truth and lies? Akane asked softly. What if it's between two kinds of honor, the lonely pride of solitude or the shared courage of sacrifice? That's sophistry. It is. And it's also true. A cherry blossom fell between them, perfect and already dying. If I accept, Kenshin said, the 12 will despise me. They'll say I sold my soul for rank. Yes, the court will say you were forced, that you had no real choice. Probably, and we'll know the truth, but never be able to say it. Yes, Kenshin looked at her. Is it worth it? To live truth in private but lie in public? I don't know, she admitted. My mother once told me marriage is about deciding which lies you can live with. Every structure in society is performance. The question is there something real behind it? And is there between us? Akane took his hand, a forbidden gesture that could ruin them both if seen. You've known me 2 weeks. I don't know if it's love yet, but I know there's respect and possibility, and a shared will to build something that isn't just politics. Is that enough? He looked at her hand in his. Small, firm, steady. It's more than most ever have, he said. So, long silence. A second blossom fell. I'll kneel, Kenshin said finally. Not because I believe in the ceremony, but because sometimes true dignity means accepting false humiliation. My master, before I lost everything, taught me this. A samurai chooses his death, but he also chooses his life. And I choose this. Akane exhaled, relief flooding through her like light after rain. There's one condition, Kenshin said. What is it? When we're alone, no court, no ceremony, we never lie to each other. Whatever mask we wear in public, in private, we are honest. Otherwise, this becomes just another performance. Agreed, she said immediately. Absolute honesty in private. Performance when needed. That's our pact. It's a pact. They sat together as more petals fell, neither realizing they were still holding hands, both aware that nothing about this would be easy, and that it was worth it precisely because of that. Noon, the grand hall of Takeda Castle, the entire court gathered, the 12 samurai and their families, Takeda's advisors, officers, merchants, nobles, enough witnesses that no one could deny what was about to happen. Akane entered in formal attire, crimson silk kimono embroidered with cherry blossoms, her hair bound in imperial style. She looked exactly as expected, The daimyo's daughter, untouchable, composed, radiant. The 13 candidates knelt in a line. The 12 clan samurai in ceremonial armor, magnificent and identical in their perfection. And at the end, Kenshin, in simple robes, no crest, no ornament. The contrast was deliberate and brutal. Takeda began with a long speech about tradition, honor, the weight of choice, words that filled time but changed nothing. Finally, Lady Akane, you have observed these 13 men, considered their virtues. Which do you choose as your husband? The hall fell silent. Akane rose. She walked slowly down the line of samurai. Before each of the 12, she bowed, a gesture of respect, acknowledgement of their valor, their families, their sacrifices. None would be humiliated more than necessary. Then she walked to the end. She stopped before Kenshin. This man, she said, voice clear enough to reach every corner of the hall, showed something the others did not. Not greater skill, many here surpass him with the sword. Not greater wisdom, many are better schooled. Not greater loyalty, all have served their clans with distinction. She paused. The hall barely breathed, but this man showed something rarer, the courage to place compassion above personal gain, to value human life above victory, to live his principles even when it cost him dearly. And those are the qualities I want beside me. A ripple of murmurs surged through the court. Shock, outrage, confusion. However, Akane continued, voice stronger now, I recognize the problem. This man is a Ronin. He has no name fit to stand beside mine. No clan to offer our children. She turned toward her father. So I ask my father this. If this man proves his loyalty, if he swears to serve the Takeda clan with all he has, would you adopt him? Give him back the name he lost? Allow him to be samurai once more? It was perfect theater. It let Takeda appear magnanimous. Gave the 12 clans a story they could accept, not an insult, but an expansion of the Takeda legacy. Takeda stood. If he swears absolute loyalty, he said, if he accepts my authority without question, if he promises to act only for the glory of the Takeda clan, then yes, I will grant adoption. He shall become Takeda Kenshin, samurai of my clan. All eyes turned to Kenshin. Kenshin remained kneeling for a long moment. He could feel the weight of every gaze, the 12 samurais' mixture of relief and disdain. They hadn't lost to a Ronin, but to a newly made samurai, less shameful though still galling. The court's confusion. Takeda's cold calculation and Akane, her eyes holding that fragile mix of hope and fear, praying he would not let pride destroy the fragile bridge she had built. He took a deep breath and remembered their pact. Public performance. Private honesty. This was performance. He had to make it convincing. He bowed low, forehead touching the floor, the deepest bow a samurai could offer. Daimyo Takeda Nobuyoshi, he said, voice echoing through the hall. I have no name to give you, no clan to honor you, no past worth remembering. All I have is this sword, this life, and the will to use them in your service. He lifted his head. If you accept me, I swear loyalty, not because I seek rank, but because your daughter saw in me something I had forgotten, the possibility of being more than a survivor. For that vision, for that chance, I give all that I am to the Takeda clan. Beautiful, humble, exactly what Takeda needed to hear. But then Kenshin added something unscripted. But I also swear this. I will never forget where I came from. I will never forget what it means to have no name, no place. And if I serve as samurai of your clan, I will serve with compassion, not only with steel. A dangerous silence followed. He had stepped out of the script, adding independence where only submission was expected. Takeda frowned, then surprisingly smiled, a small private smile, like a Go player acknowledging a clever move. Rise, Takeda Kenshin, he said. Samurai of the Takeda clan, future husband of my daughter. The hall erupted into murmurs. The 12 samurai stood and bowed, formal, reluctant acknowledgement. Families processed what it meant. Merchants recalculated fortunes, and Akane, She looked at Kenshin, no, at Takeda Kenshin now, her eyes bright with a dangerous thing, hope that their fragile pact might actually hold. Later, when the court dispersed and only reality remained, the 12 samurai gathered one last time. He played well, Honda admitted. Better than we expected. He's still a Ronin inside, Matsudaira said bitterly. Paper doesn't change that. No, Sakai replied. But maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe Lady Akane is right. Maybe we need someone who remembers what it means to be beneath us, someone who doesn't assume his place is guaranteed. You defend him now? Matsudaira snapped. I don't defend. I acknowledge. We didn't lose to him. We lost to an idea that perhaps the old rules aren't eternal. Silence followed, uneasy, contemplative. What do we do now? One of the younger samurai asked. Now! Honda sighed. We return to our clans. Tell them the Ronin was adopted, so technically we didn't lose to an outsider. Save face, then we watch, to see if this experiment holds or explodes, and if it explodes, then we'll be there to pick up the pieces, Matsudaira said. That's what vassals do, not forgiveness, not acceptance, but a reluctant recognition that the world had shifted, and that they must either shift with it or become relics. Meanwhile, in another corner of the castle, Kenshin sat alone in what was now his chamber. No longer the outer barracks, but a modest room near Akane's, small yet dignified. A complete transformation in one day. He looked at the crest of the Takeda clan, 3 diamonds within a circle, a symbol of something he had not built, not inherited, but been granted. By what? Love? Not yet. Respect? Maybe. Pragmatic alliance disguised as romance? Probably. Regretting it? Came Akan's voice from the doorway. He turned. She had shed the formal kimono for something simpler, though still unmistakably noble. The distance between them, social, not physical, was obvious. You asked if I regret it, Kenshin said. The honest answer. Always. I don't know yet. Ask me in 5 years, for now. I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of forgetting who I was. Of letting this role become me. Of waking up one day as just another samurai protecting status instead of principle. Akane stepped inside, closing the door. Scandalous, but no one dared question her now. Then don't forget, I won't let you. That's why we made our pact. Public performance, private truth. In here, you're not Takeda Kenshin, adopted samurai. You're just you. And if me isn't enough, then we'll discover what kind of us we can build. She took his hand. I'm afraid too, you know. Afraid I romanticized you. Afraid I chose the idea of you, not the man himself. Afraid that when the performance ends, there's nothing real beneath. So we're 2 frightened fools playing a dangerous game. Exactly. She smiled, truly smiled for the first time. But at least we're honest fools. Kenshin laughed, a surprised, unguarded laugh. Marriages have started with less, much less. They stood together in that small room, holding hands, while the sun set over Takeda Castle. Somewhere beyond, the 12 samurai pondered defeat, the court whispered. The clans recalculated. But here, in this fragile space between performance and truth, 2 people began the most dangerous journey of all, building something real with false tools. They didn't know if it would last. They had no guarantees, only a shared will to try. For now, that was enough. If this story moved you, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that tales like this deserve to live on. And if you wish to walk with us through more echoes of honor, love and sacrifice from old Japan, subscribe and join our circle of honor. 3 years had passed since the tournament of the Black Cherry Blossoms. Much had changed, much remained the same. Takeda Kenshin, for that was how everyone now addressed him, had become a known figure in Mikawa. Not for grand victories or political maneuvers, but for something rarer. He listened. When peasants quarreled, they came to him. When a shigeru had grievances against their officers, they spoke to him. When the poorer merchants needed someone who understood their worries, they sought the samurai who remembered what it felt like to have nothing. The noble-born samurai didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't rebellion. He was loyal to Takeda. It wasn't weakness. He still handled a sword with frightening grace. It was simply different. And different always unsettles those invested in keeping things the same. Yet it worked. Tensions in the castle eased. The Ashigaru fought with new spirit. The peasants paid taxes with less resistance, not out of fear, but because they felt seen. As for Akane, she had discovered something unexpected. Somewhere along the way, the performance had become real. Not suddenly, not magically, but in 1,000 quiet moments of private honesty, respect had turned into affection, and affection into something deeper. They still kept their pact, public performance, private truth, but the line between them had begun to blur. That morning, Akane watched Kenshin with their son, Takeda Masaru. 2 years old, born a year after their marriage, the boy had his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness. A dangerous combination. Masaru had asked something children of samurai weren't supposed to ask. Why can't the Ashigaru carry 2 swords? Kenshin could have given the traditional answer, because they are born peasants, not samurai. Instead, he knelt so their eyes were level, because long ago powerful men decided that some births were worth more than others, he said, and that rule stayed because it served the powerful. But that's unfair, the child said. Yes. Then why do you follow it? Kenshin looked at his son, truly looked with the full attention he gave only to those who mattered. Because sometimes you must live inside an unjust system to change it. If I break the rule openly, they'll kill me, and the rule stays. But if I follow it while treating everyone with respect, I plant seeds. Seeds grow slowly, but they grow. That sounds like cowardice, Masaru said, with the brutal honesty of a child. Kenshin laughed. It does, and sometimes it is. The line between pragmatism and cowardice is thin. You'll have to find it for yourself. From the veranda, Akane felt her chest tighten, pride mixed with fear. Kenshin was teaching the boy to question, a dangerous skill for a future daimyo, but perhaps the most necessary one. That evening, Akane and Kenshin sat in the same pavilion where she had first seen him, across the training yard 3 years earlier. The cherry trees were in bloom again. The eternal cycle of beauty and death. Masaru asked a dangerous question today. Akane said, I know. You answered dangerously. I know. She leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. Natural now. Sometimes I fear we're teaching him how not to survive in this world, or we're teaching him to build a world where survival isn't the only virtue. Optimism or delusion? Probably both. They laughed, the quiet laughter of people who shared private jokes built over years. Do you regret it? Akane asked. Kneeling that day? Making the pact? Genshin thought before answering. I regret that it had to be done, but I don't regret doing it. There's a difference. What kind of difference? The first kind of regret wishes to change the past. The second accepts the past and works to change the future. One paralyzes. The other moves you forward. Akane was silent for a while. Do you know what my father told me yesterday? What? That you were the best political decision he ever made. Not in spite of being a Ronin, but because of it. He said the 12 clans could never unite against you. You pose no threat of domination. You're neutral ground, so he sees me as a convenient political tool. Not only that, he also said you make him think, that sometimes, late at night, he still remembers your words during the tournament about the man hanging from the branch, and those who pretend they're not falling. He'll never admit it, but that's as close to a compliment as he gives. And you? Kenshin asked. How do you see me? Still as the idea you romanticized or as the man himself? Both, she said. And something more. What more? A partner. She intertwined her fingers with his. At first, I didn't know if this would be a real marriage or just a pragmatic alliance wearing a romantic mask. But somewhere along the way, that stopped mattering. What we've built is real, regardless of how it began. A cherry blossom landed in Kenshin's lap. He caught it gently. You know what my old master said about cherry trees? He asked. What? That they're beautiful because they die. Impermanence is what makes them precious. They're not lovely in spite of ending. They're lovely because they do. That's far too zen for me, Akane said, smiling. It's too zen for me, too. But I think I finally understand it. He looked at the flower. This pact of ours, public performance, private truth, is temporary. One day Masaru will grow. One day your father will die. One day the structures we navigate will change or collapse. Nothing lasts. That should sound depressing. It doesn't. It reminds me to value now, this moment. You and me in this pavilion, while our son sleeps. The castle quiet, the world still for a heartbeat. Akane rested her head on his shoulder again. You've become poetic. Your fault. 3 years married to a woman who reads poetry. Some of it was bound to stick. They sat in silence, watching the blossoms drift in the moonlight. Behind them, the Takeda domain slept. The clans planned, the soldiers dreamed, the merchants schemed, all the machinery of power kept turning. But here, in this small space between performance and truth, 2 human beings simply existed, without masks, without audience. Promise me something, Akane said suddenly. What? When I die, not soon but eventually because everyone does, promise you'll tell Masaru the real story of us, not the official tale the court repeats, not the legend of the generous Daimyo who adopted a nameless Ronin, but the truth about hard choices, imperfect bargains, and love that grew in improbable soil. Why? Because I want him to know it's possible, that you can live within a flawed system without losing your soul. That performance and truth aren't opposites. They're tools for imperfect people trying to build meaningful, lives in an imperfect world. You want him to be like me? No. Better than you. But to be better, he must know where we began. He must know that real change doesn't come from grand revolutions. It comes from 1,000 small choices by people trying to be just a little better than the generation before. Kenshin closed his eyes. I promise, but only on one condition. What condition? That you live long enough for us to tell it together, as 2 old fools sitting right here, drinking sake and arguing over which version is correct. Akane laughed. Deal. More blossoms fell. The moon continued its slow arc across the sky, and 2 people who had once been strangers, then partners, then something deeper, stayed in the pavilion until the chill finally drove them inside. At the door, Akane paused. Do you think we made the right choice? That day at the tournament, Genshin looked back toward the castle where their child slept, where his life had taken root, where he now had name, purpose, and peace. Then he looked at Akane, the woman who had seen him when he had nothing to offer but character. I don't know if it was the right choice, he said honestly, but it was ours, and that matters. They went inside, leaving the garden to the falling petals, beautiful precisely because no one forced them to be. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Matsudaira Tadaki requested a private audience with Kenshin. 3 years had aged him. The fierce pride was gone, replaced by something heavier. I've come to apologize, he said without preamble. Kenshin, surprised, motioned for him to sit. For what? For the conspiracy, for the plan to remove you, for my contempt. He looked at his hands, and especially for lacking the courage to say this 3 years ago, when it mattered. Why now? Because my father died last month, Matsudaira said. On the morning before he passed, he saw you with your son in the courtyard. That night, he told me something I can't forget. Kenshin's expression softened, listening as Matsudaira continued. He had watched you with your son that morning, saw how you answered difficult questions with honesty instead of dogma, and he said, that Ronin we despised understands fatherhood better than any of us, because he teaches thought, not obedience. Silence hung between them. I have 3 sons, Matsudaira continued, and I'm training them exactly as I was trained, to obey first, understand later. Seeing you, I realize I'm preparing them for a world that's already dying. It's not dying, Kenshin said gently. It's changing, slowly, but changing. You truly believe that? That the system can change from within? Some days I do. Other days I think I'm fooling myself, that I've become part of the very machine I wanted to fix. He paused. But I still try, because giving up guarantees nothing will change. Matsudaira was quiet a long while. I envied you, you know, during the tournament. Not your skill or your virtue, your freedom. As a Ronin, you owed nothing to anyone. You could simply be yourself. Freedom of having nothing, Kenshin said, isn't freedom. It's loneliness with a poetic name. And now, with name, rank, family, do you still feel like yourself? Kenshin considered. Sometimes. When I'm with Akane, with Masaru, when I help an Ashigaru solve a dispute. In those moments, yes. But in court, wearing this crest, reciting protocol, then I feel like I'm playing an acceptable version of myself. So you live divided? We all live divided, Kenshin said. The question isn't how to avoid the split, but which side you choose to feed. Matsudaira rose to leave. At the door he paused. If you could go back, would you still choose to kneel? Yes, Kenshin said without hesitation. Not because I crave the rank, but because I love what came from it, a family. The chance to make small changes, the privilege of being heard when I speak. Those things matter more than pure ideals. Is that wisdom or rationalization? Kenshin smiled sadly. Probably both. And so ends the story of 12 samurai, who fought for a daimyo's daughter, and of the impossible choice she made, not because the 13th man was the strongest. He wasn't, not because he was the wisest, debatable, not because fate or gods decreed it, but because sometimes, within the rigid structures we build to contain the chaos of being human, a crack appears, and through that crack, possibility that we don't have to accept the world as it was, handed to us, that we can be pragmatic without becoming cynical, that we can play the game without losing the... So Lady Akane didn't choose Kenshin because he was perfect. She chose him because he was honest about his imperfection, because he had fallen and learned something in the fall, because he treated the dignity of others as more important than his own comfort. And Kenshin didn't accept adoption out of ambition. He accepted because he understood that sometimes true dignity requires accepting temporary indignity, that living one's values doesn't mean dying for them, but finding creative ways to express them within the limits of the real world. They didn't get a fairy tale ending, they got a human one. Complicated, imperfect, full of doubts, and full of genuine effort. And genuine effort, in a world that rewards performance over sincerity, is the rarest courage of all. The 12 samurai returned to their clans. Some learned, others didn't. Matsudaira became Masaru's mentor, teaching him lessons learned too late. Sakai began treating his servants with new respect. Honda remained Honda. Some men age, others merely grow older. Daimyo Takeda lived another 12 years, long enough to see his clever political move turn into something stranger, a real family. He died, never admitting he had been wrong, but also never denying that perhaps the Ronin had taught an old dog a few new tricks. And Masaru, he grew between two worlds, the tradition of his grandfather and the possibility whispered by his parents. One day, he would have to choose his own path, but at least, thanks to them, he would have a choice, and choice, even a painful one, is always better than destiny. As for the cherry blossoms, they kept falling, year after year, beautiful, indifferent, eternal. Nature doesn't care about our small revolutions, but that doesn't make those revolutions any less meaningful for the ones who live them. In the end, this isn't a story about samurai, it's a story about people trying to remain human inside systems that prefer them as pieces on a board, about choosing compassion when pragmatism advises cruelty, about building something real with imperfect tools. It's the story of 12 men who competed flawlessly, and 1 man who competed honestly, and of a woman wise enough to know the difference, and Sometimes, just sometimes, wisdom wins, even when it shouldn't.